Hey, this is Donnie Smith, and I got a question emailed to me, an auto body and paint question, and it's about primer, the restore and pickup. And well, I'll go ahead and read the comment to you. This was sent by Gary Williams. It says, "Hi Donnie, I love your website. Have learned much from your videos and blogs." Well, thanks, Gary. But it says, "But I need a little direction. I have attached two photos of my '65 Chevy C10 that needs a lot of love. I'm a DIY guy and can only dedicate a few hours a week to work on her, and sadly she is not garaged and is exposed to the Florida sun and rain all the time. I need to do small areas of rust bodywork and time sanding off the surface rust, filling and priming. I have developed a starting line spray gun kit, so here are my questions." Okay, number one, what's the best approach? Should I sand off the rust to bare metal and prime without using filler or glaze for now to get her protected, and then go back and sand, fill, glaze, and prime again before final painting? Okay, let's talk about number one first. Let's address that one. So, we run into this a lot of times, at school. We'll have some students, the only project that they have, that they're working on, if it's their project, they may not be able to leave it there. They need to drive it back and forth. Also, in my Mustang project, I had to do a lot of that without it being in a garage. And so you do have to do things a little bit different. It takes longer than it normally would. I mean, it's really nice to tear something down and do everything you need to do, but that's just not always, the case that we can do that, especially the DIY. So what I would do in a situation like this, especially a restoration project, is if I was needing to do a small portion at a time, I would really try, I know you may not be able to do this, but I would really try to concentrate on one panel at a time. For example, if you got some surface rust that you're sanding off, I might use some 80 grit to get it sanded off to bare metal, and then I'll come back and apply some epoxy on it. Epoxy's excellent for corrosion protection, to keep the metal from rusting and things like that. And epoxy is the only primer that is allowed that you can put or recommended, that you can put body filler and putties and things like that on. Primer surfacers like 2K primer surfacers, it's really not recommended that you do that, or even direct to metal. But epoxy, you can go ahead and epoxy the entire panel, even if it has some body work that you're going to have to straighten out later. Go ahead and get it epoxied, and then you can come back and address those areas later. So for example, let's say I got a door. I get the entire door stripped down to metal one day. I 80 grit it and, get all the rust off. Now, if there's pitted rust, you may want to get you a little sand blaster to get inside those pits. I don't know, how bad some of the rust is, but sometimes it's hard just to sand it off, or you might, want to do some metal treatments. There's a lot of options there. That gets into a whole different subject, but let's just keep it, sand it with 80 grit, maybe a wire brush if it's, got some small rust pits in it, and get all the paint off, all the coatings, and then go ahead and shoot epoxy on that door. Put 2 or 3 coats of epoxy. Read your technical data sheet to see what that specific brand, how much they require that you put on, recommend that you put on. And then, okay, you can be done with that door. There may be some dents in it still, that's fine. Now let's say when you come back to that door at a later time, let's say there was a dent that you needed to repair on it. Now you can come back and, you can grind that or whatever you need to do, work the metal, and then come back and do your body filler and metal straightening, whatever steps you need to take to get the dent right. And then you can apply epoxy back on it. And the good thing about epoxy is you can sandwich epoxy. You can put epoxy down, put body filler on top of that. Now, never put any type of coating, body filler or putty on unsanded epoxy or paint, anything like that. You always want it to be sanded. Like putty can be applied over sanded paint if it's OEM, but it does need to be sanded with at least 180 grit. So 180 is the finest you want to go before planning on applying some body filler or some glaze putty. So we've got that dent, and now what we're going to do is we're going to, if it needs to be straightened, you're going to straighten it and then sand that area where your body filler will be applied. Sand that with 80 or 180, apply your body filler, block it out, get it the way you want it, and then apply epoxy back on top of that. Then you can be done with that until a later time whenever you do the primer surfacer. Or if the door is done after applying the primer, body filler, it's done. You're not going to have to do anything else to it. You can go ahead and put some epoxy back on that to protect the metal, 1 or 2 coats. Allow it to flash for 30 minutes, or whatever the technical data sheet recommends, and come back and put primer surfacer, on that area. And remember, anywhere primer surfacer is applied, it's going to have to be sanded as well. 220, 320, something like that, so that it sticks. If it's allowed to dry outside of the window. Most epoxies have a long window, 72 hours. If you apply your primer surfacer within 72 hours, you don't have to sand it. But if it's after that, you're going to have to sand that for the surfacer to stick to it. So, hope I didn't get confusing. I think I got a little bit off subject there, but yeah, I would apply epoxy primer to those areas. And you said smaller areas. If you had to, you just didn't have time to do a panel at a time, you might break it into sections, like from the body line up on the door, and then from the body line down, or something like that. That may work as well. But again, it's just going to be determine, how much time. Do you have a weekend to do one panel, or, how's that going to work? It's just kind of going to depend on you. Let's go ahead and go to number 2. Because I will be prepping small spots at a time, 1 to 2 square feet, what is the best primer to use? And that's going to be epoxy, in my opinion. That's going to provide the best corrosion protection. And like I said, you can come back and you can sand and apply glaze putty if need be, or body filler, or whatever. And also epoxy, if you layer it, you're usually not going to have a lot of problems, any chemical reactions or anything like that. You can sandwich that epoxy. So I would say epoxy would be the best to use. Knowing it will be exposed to the weather for long periods of time before final prep and paint, and knowing that I will have to go back and sand the reprime the entire truck before final painting. Yes, again, I recommend epoxy, and you will have to sand that. And whenever it's time to paint that, let's say the door was in good shape, it didn't have any dents, no problems. On a truck like this, I don't always recommend priming the whole truck with primer surfacer, but just to assure that there's no lows or things like that, here's what I'd probably do on that. I'd probably go ahead and sand it with 220, whenever I was ready. Let's say it had no damage. But go ahead and sand that door with 220 grit. And then I'm going to come back with some primer surfacer, put 2 to 3 coats of that on that, 2K primer, and then allow that to dry, and then block that out with 320. And be sure and use guide coat when you're blocking. That way if there's any lows or imperfections, you'll find them at that time. Then once you have the door, I'm just using one panel because that's kind of what the question's about, one section. Once you have the door block sanded with 320, you can go back over it with 500 just to, minimize those 320 grit scratches, and that will prepare it for the paint. Once it's sanded with 500, you can, do the prep steps, the cleaning steps, and be ready to spray the primer sealer, if you're using sealer with the product line that you're using, and then your base coat and clear coat. And number 3, how long can I leave the truck in primer? It will take a long time before final painting, and the truck will be out in the Florida sun and rain. Should I paint her with temporary final paint, go back and repaint all later? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that for sure. Epoxy will last a while, but it just does not have the UV protection in it. That's where your clear coats and things like that come from. It does provide corrosion protection, but that sun, that will bake it, will thin it, and, it won't last forever. It'll probably last for a while, but, maybe someone on here has some experience with that. How long have you left an epoxy fender out there without any problems? That's something I don't have the answer to. You may look on the technical data sheet. I don't know if it would give that type of information or not. But your safest bet may be, each panel to go ahead and, at least shoot some single stage color on it. Like if it's red, go ahead and spray some red. And that single stage has the UV protection. And that way you don't have no problems. Then at a later time, whenever you want to paint the whole vehicle, you can come back and then you can final sand all that with 500. And then come back with your, your single stage if you're doing single stage, or your base clear. So it may not be a bad idea to go ahead and paint the panels. I think that was your question. That would give you the best protection, especially with the UV protection and things like that, where it wouldn't start rusting on you again. So there may be some of you out there that kind of have can help us out there, because I don't know the answer to that for sure. But if you did paint it, that would protect it. And I don't know what color you're painting this pickup. Like if it's a solid color, you may be fine. It may match fine when you're done, even if it's panel painted in separate parts. If it's a pearl or metallic, it's not going to match probably, and you're going to want to paint it all at one time, so that the different colors do match. So I hope that was somewhat helpful, not a real direct answer, but if there's some of you DIY restoration guys out there, that can better answer that question, be sure and leave us a comment below. I mean, I certainly don't admit to know everything. I'll give you my opinions and to the best of my knowledge, but I don't know everything, and I'll be the first to admit that. Most of my experience comes from the collision repair side, and doing collision work. A lot of times we don't do a lot of restoration. I've done some restoration, but have less experience on that side as I do the regular collision repair. So anyway, let's go ahead and get to number 4. It says, if I use epoxy, I will be setting up my spray gun and cleaning it more than actual painting. Suggestions? Use a smaller detail gun. No, I would probably go ahead and use your regular gun. The small detail gun probably has a small tip on it, needle and tip, and probably the epoxy would not spray through that properly. I would go ahead and use your other gun. Now, if you're wanting to save time on cleaning, it's more expensive, but there is a way that does cut down on a lot of your cleaning, and we use it at the school. I mean, I wouldn't want to not use it, but if you're on a budget, it is more expensive. But that is to use the 3M. Well, DeVelvis, they have their own brand of this too. I can't think of the name of those for them, but 3M's version is the PPS system, and basically it's just a cup that sits on top, and you can just take the liner out, throw it away, then you just have your gun to clean. Really simplifies it. I'll try to put a link down below where I am demonstrating that, and so you can determine if that's something that you want to invest in or not. Like I say, it is going to cost a little bit more money to use that, but it does cut down on your time when cleaning. So hope this helps answer some of your questions. If not, leave me another comment and I'll do my best to answer it again. Anyway, thanks for emailing this to me, Gary. And to you and everyone out there that watches my videos, thanks for watching the videos. Thanks for your questions and comments. And if you have a better answer than I provided here, by all means, please leave us a comment down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.